You're hanging out in the House of Sunny podcast, where it's always sunny, mostly because of your host, comedian and YouTuber, Sunny Loman. Want to know what Sunny and her friends are thinking about this week? Well, here she is, Sunny Loman.
Welcome. I'm here with Sidekick Doug from The Rational Capitalist. And also with us this morning is writer, producer, sometimes YouTuber, Kira Davis. We're going to talk about Kira and what she's up to in a moment. Then I have on the political agenda today the Women's March, DACA, the shutdown, the FBI scandal. I don't know if we're going to get to all this stuff, but we can't end the show without Kira and I talking about Jane Fonda. So that's coming up too. And you can call the show and leave a voicemail at 707-681-5834. And we will play it on the air if it's good. Doug, last week you weren't with us, but I asked for people to call in jokes.
Yeah.
And I got a few.
Nice.
So I'm going to play those now for you guys.
Great.
Hi, Kira. I should just say hi to Kira first. Hi, Doug. Hi, Kira.
Hi.
Welcome to the show. All right, here's our first joke. See if my Google voicemail works. Do not disturb is on. Okay.
Nothing works.
I know.
Hey, Sonny, here's a joke
Wait,
for you.
I got to turn the volume up.
The human cannonball goes to see the manager of the circus, and he says, I quit. And the manager says, you can't do that. Where will I ever find another man of your caliber?
Did you catch that?
Wow.
Lame.
Wow.
Nice. Excellent.
They get worse.
Oh, okay.
Here's another one.
Okay, here's another hilarious joke. A guy goes to a Chinese restaurant. After he finishes a meal, he opens his Chinese fortune cookie and he reads the message which says, help, I am a prisoner in a Chinese fortune cookie factory.
No.
Yeah.
No. That's not a joke. That's like a plot to a Twilight Zone episode or Dark Mirror.
Exactly.
Right. That's not a joke. Who thinks that's a joke?
That's not a joke. Yeah, I agree with Kira. That's like a plot. That's a plot of a new web series or something. It's actually awesome.
It is an awesome plot.
Dun, dun, dun.
All right. Here's another one.
To the pleasant beep. Here's my joke.
Okay.
A wife came home and said, hey, honey, I bought a little wine. And she displayed an entire grocery bag full of delicious wine. The husband replied, they look normal size to me, honey.
No. Wow.
My fans are hilarious.
This is a really fascinating study in terrible joke telling. I didn't realize there was such bad jokes out there, but it's cool that people,
These are the ones, like, you're sitting at home and you're saying to yourself, I'm going to call in a joke, and this is the one you pick? Like, you have Google at your fingertips.
Right.
And you pick these terrible jokes.
Right.
I'm not complaining. Keep calling them in, guys. Okay, one last one.
Hi, Sonny. Here's a joke. A guy runs into the doctor's office and yells, Doctor, doctor. The doctor says, control yourself, my good man. What seems to be the trouble? He says, my dick fell off. He says, where is it? He says, right in here in my pocket. The doctor says, that's nothing but a cigar. He says, holy God, I smoked my dick.
Ah, that was kind of fun. Okay.
Okay. If you want to call it a joke for next week's episode, make it a good one. Google something. 707-681-5834. We'll play it on the air. Obviously, even if it's bad, we'll play it. Unless we get more, then we'll just play the good ones. But that's it for right now. So, hey, Kira, tell us what you're up to these days. I mean, you're writing and you're still doing the same. You're writing at the Federalist, Red State. You have your Phantom Sway site, and you can tell people about that too. But I just want to kind of know what you're up to and what you've been doing.
Well, I'm still mainly focused in politics. You can find, I mainly write at Red State now. I'm a front page contributor over there. And I still freelance. You can still see me around on Fox News or sometimes MSNBC. And then I have some personal projects going on. I'm an artist at heart, so I have some things going on in the entertainment realm as well.
You're an actor, right?
I'm an actor, but I'm still kind of semi-retired. I retired right around 2010 to stay home with my kids, and took up writing because I just wasn't happy only being at home.
Had to do something. Yeah.
I had to do something else. Just because, I mean, it's challenging, but it's mundane. You know, it's to be a stay-at-home mom. It's the same thing day in and day out. And I'm not that great at it, to be honest. So
unlike us.
Yeah, Doug and I are expert parents.
I know everything. I've never made a mistake.
Feel free to ask us any questions.
Okay, great. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. But I've always kept up with the news, no matter what I've been doing in my other life. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. You can check me out at Red State. Got lots of stuff up there.
That's great. So you retired, but I became aware of you when you had a really viral video, which was kind of a rant, and I can't even remember the subject now, but that was around 2010, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're thinking of the Obama apology video, which really launched me. And then now this is old news compared to what's going on now, but at the time, Obama had made an apology to the government of Afghanistan because there have been some rumors in what I suppose we would call fake news right now these days. There have been rumors that some U.S. Marines had burned some copies of the Quran. It turned out not to be true. And
if so what?
Yeah. But Obama apologized anyway for it. And I think at the time, a lot of us were really upset that it just seemed like this guy was every opportunity he had to side against the interests of the United States, he did, and I know that was I don't think that it was like, I hate America. I think that in his mind, as a very liberal Democrat who was raised by a hippie, this was the way to kind of write foreign policy. Like, America just hasn't been deferential enough. But a lot of us didn't appreciate it. I was one, and I had just started working in politics and had opened a YouTube page and really wasn't doing much, just kind of personal thoughts and personal blog. And so I penned this kind of fake apology letter to the president of Afghanistan, which was just like, I'm sorry that you guys suck. I'm sorry that we have to be there. I'm sorry that we have to be there to save your ass. And,
yeah, right.
And I'm sorry that you live in a third world country that gives women, that treats women as second class citizens and children as worse. So I posted that, and it just immediately went viral. I mean, It got 1 million hits in just a few days.
Yeah, that was big.
And at that time, that was huge. So,
those were early days. I started on YouTube in 2010 also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm falling in love with Kira. I just wanted to let you know.
Yeah. When she says, "I'm sorry that you suck," you just hit Doug's buttons there.
Yeah,
his happy buttons.
Yeah, but yeah, that's how I started, and just started getting work after that. And I was really involved at the time in the Tea Party movement. And then I've always been an activist for school choice. That's one of my biggest, kind of pet issues. And so I do a lot of work with school choice and limited government stuff. That's my jam.
Did you see, I just saw a headline. I didn't read the story, but Betsy DeVos, something about Common Core being dead or something like that. I don't know if that's true, but.
Yeah, I saw that headline too.
No, I don't think it's dead. I'm sorry, I hit the mute button by mistake. I don't think it's dead officially, but what they did is what Trump is kind of doing across the board as far as regulations are concerned. They're defunding it. And the only reason that Common Core is, used in so many states is there's a financial incentive that goes with it. And that's that it's like, that's a bribe basically. And so that's kind of one of the things that Trump had run on, although it wasn't one of his main issues, but that he would defund some of these federal programs at the federal level. So that's what they're doing. They're defunding that. They're also not funding the lunch program, Michelle Obama's horrible lunch program. So you can still use it. I mean, it's not against the law. You can still use Common Core. We still use it here in California right now. But they won't be paying you extra money for it anymore.
Okay. So they were subsidizing people to adopt it, and now they're not going to do that.
Yes.
California just does everything.
Yeah.
They do everything before they have to, before they're paid to do it. I'm new here. I moved here 3 years ago. And I sort of loosely paid attention to what was going on in the state before I moved here. But now that I'm here, I guess I pay more attention. And I start to worry, is there going to be a point where I'm going to have to leave? Because they really just the Democrats have a total majority here forever. It's not going to change.
Around it. It's not. And the only thing to do now is to either get super rich, which is a lot of people who stay here. That's what they're working towards.
Right.
They're working towards getting super rich. Or you just accept that your life is going to be smaller and a lot more limited.
More bureaucracy, more trouble.
Than the rest of the country. But, there are plenty of people leaving this state every day. I mean, lifelong Californians.
Including liberals. Or I should say leftists. They're like, oh, it sucks here. Let's go ruin North Carolina.
Somewhere else. Yeah.
North Carolina seems to be good.
Well, the problem is that no matter how many of them move out, it's like they're like the tribbles on Star Trek. They just keep multiplying out where they're coming from.
Well, you know where that comes from.
We all can appreciate.
It comes from Mexico. So, yeah. We can talk about
what
DACA.
about the Republic of California that was declared? Is that real, or is that just fanciful?
I don't even do that. I don't even think it's constitutional. But I think it's just a statement. People here are sick. Like, I live in a red county. I live in Orange County. And so we pay for a lot of what goes on in this state. And people are sick of it. Like, I'm just sick of having our taxes raised and raised and raised. And we're taking care of our business here in Orange County. But then we got to be responsible for everybody else's business. And everybody else is voting the wrong way. So we're just like getting hit after hit into our pockets. We just passed this historic new gas tax, which the state legislature did in the middle of the night, guys, literally in the middle of the night, so that no one would notice and none of the bloggers and hawks would be there. And then they passed another fee. It's a raise in the car registration fee. This
is the second gas tax increase since I've lived here. 3 years.
And there's another one coming, Sunny. In 2 years, another one will kick in. The total for gas tax, the total will be almost $1.50 over 4 years. And we've also raised the car registration fee. So in some cases, that fee is raised by $172.
No wonder everybody goes on welfare, because you can't afford, if I'm poor, that hurts me most, actually. Absolutely. And like you said, everybody just trying to get rich, because I'm dealing with the California Obamacare. I was forced onto it last year, and somebody in this is like a crazy socialized medicine story. Somebody in November in the Napa County office just typoed me in as a non-US citizen. And that started this chain reaction. My insurance was canceled on January 1st.
Oh my gosh.
And nobody knew why. And they just kept saying, well, you're not eligible. And I'm like, but how is that possible? And they kept coming up with these excuses. And, it's hard to figure out if they're right or they're wrong, because you have to read like a 1,000-page document to figure out if you're eligible, and then try to understand that. And 2 days of physically being in the county office and pushing. And actually it ended up just going back and back and back and finally finding somebody with a brain. That's literally what it took, who then said, oh, well, she's not eligible because she's not a U.S. citizen. And we're like, well, wait a sec. I am a U.S. citizen. So
Wow.
then we figured out what it was. It took 2 weeks for me to get my insurance back. And that was 2 weeks of pushing. And then I got a new policy, which now I was under my old policy number dealing with a medication appeal. And now that appeal has to start over.
Oh, good Lord. And the irony of that story is that if you were a non-citizen living here, all that would be taken care of automatically.
Right.
Piece of cake. Oh, yeah. She could go, if she was a citizen in this state, you can get a driver's license.
Yeah.
You can get access to legal help.
You can vote.
Can go to school for free. You can vote. You can get welfare without any documentation.
You can go to the hospitals and get care without any questions.
You can get Medicaid. You can get CHIP. You can get WIC. You can get all of the welfare program, like for nothing, I had a girlfriend here in Orange County who is upper class white woman, but her husband was in the mortgage industry. And when that bubble popped during the Obama years, they went from being very rich to having nothing. I mean, like living in a mansion with no furniture, you know what I mean? Like no food in the cupboard, just like house poor, really in a jam. It was just a disaster. And so she had to swallow her pride and go apply for welfare benefits. And she said, I went down there and I was the only person in the room that spoke English, including the workers.
Right.
Wow.
And she said they didn't ask me for anything. I went in and I said, I think I don't know if I qualify. I am married. You know, I'm not a single mom. But we've lost everything, blah, blah, blah. And they were like, well, you're not supposed to be married when you're on welfare, which is a whole other thing. But technically you're not supposed to be married. So we'll just mark you down as separated, which she wasn't, but that's what they did. And they put her right on the rolls. She said there was nothing to it. And you know why they do that? Again, because they get federal incentives to do that. That's why we advertise the food stamp program in California. You can find advertisements for the food stamp program because they get money from the feds for every person they sign up.
You can also commit murder in California as an illegal.
Yep.
And get off. Yep. And not be deported.
Not be deported. Not only will they not deport you, they will actually assign a legal protector to you, a lawyer that we pay for so that you don't have to deal with ICE, and they will not put you in the prison system because they don't want ICE to go through there and get you. So they'll just release you. Yeah. Or like we just had a case of a judge here in California that vacated the charge for an illegal immigrant, and it was armed robbery charge, and he vacated the charge because he got flagged by ICE. And so he vacated the charge so that illegal alien would not be in the prison system so that ICE could come get him. We're actively working against citizens here in the state of California. Right. It's insane.
Well, speaking of that,
the AG threatened to fine or imprison anyone that cooperated with ICE, any employer that cooperated with ICE, right?
Yeah, the California AG, that is absolutely right. Any employer, they will not arrest illegal immigrants who kill or commit crimes here in the state of California, but they will arrest you as an employer if you comply with the federal immigration authorities.
Oh my God.
You cannot make this stuff up.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I didn't even realize it was that bad, you guys.
That bad.
Yeah. And to kind of segue into the larger national issues, the government shutdown, the Democrats I'm for government shutdowns, first of all. There's rarely a government shutdown
government shutdowns, please.
Yeah, I don't,
right.
There's not really a government shutdown I don't like, but it is hilarious to me that it was shut down for illegal aliens.
They really missed that call, didn't they?
Yeah, that was kind of a mistake on their part. I think they didn't realize that people actually kind of don't appreciate that.
Well, you would think after 2016, that's the thing, Sonny.
Yeah.
You guys, we just went through a whole big drama election where all the left was like, oh my God, how did this happen? And we were like, well, here's how it happened, A, B, C, and D. You guys have been ignoring what all these people have been saying, and then what happened with Obama is he came along and he changed the game, and the Republicans could not catch up. They could not figure out what it was about this guy that the general public loves so much. And they were always trying to play catch up. They could not play his game. The Democrats ran shit for 8 years because they couldn't catch up.
Well, also because the Republicans, I mean, the ones who were in power at that time were the kind of mealy-mouthed,
establishment.
Over-rehearsed. I mean, they truly don't really care that much about they're politicians. And
yes, they're government workers.
Yeah. And they were still in the George Bush mode of compassionate conservatism.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. But yeah. But now we're in the age of Trump, and the script has flipped, and it's the other way around.
You're right.
Now the Democrats can't figure Trump out, and they are way behind the 8 ball, and they don't know how to catch up because they've never seen anything like this. I never have seen, I tweeted this out yesterday. You can follow me on Twitter at Kira Ayn Davis, Ayn Davis. And I tweeted this out. This guy, I have never seen a politician have the power of branding the way that Trump does. I mean, the Trump brand is so powerful that he just says something and it's immediately in our lexicon. So that Schumer shutdown thing was brilliant.
Schumer shutdown was a really good one.
Schumer shutdown. We never could have done that in the Obama era. We never would have had control over a narrative like that in the Obama era. But it's just something about even the opposition to Trump is all based, like he's setting the tone, like hashtag pussy hats. That's something he said. Hashtag Kofefi. That's something he said. Hashtag fake news. That's something he said. Even when activists are using these things as a rallying cry, they're using his branding.
Well, the fake news thing started on the left, but he took it and it's become, he totally co-opted it. It was like, he flipped it completely.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. I've never seen anything like it.
It's not just the words he comes up with, but it's the fearlessness,
Right.
I think.
Yeah, I don't know how you guys feel about his. I mean, I definitely would like to hear your thoughts about his tweeting, and because I hear a lot. There's a lot of people who can't really deny a lot of the improvements that we've experienced over the last year, but that aren't Trump supporters. Kind of like me. Like I wasn't.
You were a Cruz supporter, I think, weren't you?
I was Rubio, Cruz, and then I was just anybody but Trump.
Yeah. Do you know what's funny, Kara? Like, you know how Facebook gives you your memories from past? So in this month, in January, when all this stuff was happening 2 years ago, I was posting some really hardcore anti-Trump stuff. And it keeps popping up in my newsfeed right now. I was just completely for Cruz, and Trump was a horrible person in the primaries. It was just gross. And a liar. I was not a supporter of his at all. And I still would have preferred Cruz. Ideologically, but could Cruz get these results? God, maybe.
No.
I don't think so.
The thing,
he wouldn't have won.
Well, yeah, would he have beat Hillary? I don't know. I mean, the problem with Cruz is that he's got a kind of a weird personality. He's over-rehearsed. He's got that slick kind of thing. I don't think that would.
I call it used car salesman.
He would not have appealed to a percentage of Democrats the way Trump did. And so I don't know if he would have beat Hillary, but Hillary was so bad. It's kind of hard to believe. She was so bad.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. She was such a terrible candidate.
Couldn't beat her.
This really is astonishing. But to go back to my question, I hear a lot of people say, well, Trump's okay if he could just stop, if he could just be more presidential, if he could just stop tweeting this stuff, he'd be great. He doesn't need to do this. And my thing is, but that is Trump. That's part of it. Like with a Donald Trump, you can't, there is no one or the other. They both go together. So the crass, weird, obsessed Trump on Twitter goes with the experienced negotiator and the no-nonsense leader that he is. And I don't know, do you guys have a problem with his tweeting?
I like it. And it's funny that this is the thing that everybody is so upset about, because for me, it's the thing I like about him most, that he's kind of pushing back on our cultural PC stuff and this over rehearsed, can't say this, can't say that. Especially if you're on the right, you've been really, you've been crushed. You can't say anything. The media will jump all over you. Everybody jumps all over you. Everybody's always apologizing for everything. And Trump is unapologetic and he's tough. And I always liked that about him. I made a video during the primary when I hated him, right after he said to the Mexican president guy, that wall just got 10 feet taller. You remember that comment that he made?
Yeah.
Like the guy insulted him, said something, we're not paying for that fucking wall. And Trump said, that wall just got 10 feet taller. And I made a video and I'm like, I get it. Like he said that and I'm cheering. I love that. I think that's great. I want more of that. And yeah, it's not George Washington, but whatever. I mean, this is what our culture needs right now, frankly.
Yeah, we got the leader we deserved, and everything we've been doing politically up to this point, has led to him. So whether or not you like it, we're all responsible for him.
We needed the pendulum swing, I think, and I feel like he's going to open the door. This type of fearless, say what you mean, direct language is going to lead to maybe a better ideological president later who can actually just speak normal. Because
I think that's a good point. Yeah. And don't you think that the Republicans are kind of picking up on it? Like I do.
Still, absolutely.
Politicians, but I do notice, like I'll hear Paul Ryan speak, or even like Ted Cruz or Marco Rubio, I'll hear them speak on something lately. And I'm realizing, they are more concise than I've ever heard them before.
They're more bold. They're more brave. And I think that happened in the primary. I saw that happening with Ted Cruz in the primary.
I have a little different take, but for the same reason, which is you're seeing the same boldness from the left. And I think that's actually positive too, because they're putting their cards on the table. So rather than this real
that's a
sort
good point.
of, formal, polite, no one really saying what they mean type debates where, it's real milquetoast kind of down the middle. Instead, you're seeing, both sides open up like, okay, Trump. If you're saying this, then we're going to say what we really think.
That's such a good point. And what they really think is not what Americans want.
Exactly. And that's an exposure. They needed to be exposed. They're not
a really good point.
Idealistic, America-loving kind of, what would you call them?
We love people. We love poor people. We really care about everybody. No, we care about illegals, not Americans.
Yeah, and we're going to shut you down. We're going to violently prevent you from speaking if we don't agree with you. We're going to torch dissenters. I mean, their true colors have shown too, and I think that's real healthy.
No, I you know what? You're the first person I've heard to put it like that, and I think that is an excellent point. And we're seeing this right in the way that Trump was able to frame the shutdown, and he did the same thing with the Planned Parenthood debate. So it's always been like, hey, Planned Parenthood is just all about abortion. And then the left is like, well, no, it's not. It's about healthcare and it's very necessary. And so Trump's like, okay, great. If it is, then how about we strip out all funding for abortion, but we leave all the other funding. and then they were like, oh, you can't do it. And so it just puts those cards on the table that, okay, no, this was the sacred cow. And all their denials were BS. Because this is what they want. I mean, whether or not you're on board with that that's a different topic, but it's just an example of how
him forcing the narrative. He's forcing them to like come out with what they actually mean.
They mean.
Yeah.
What exactly do you mean by you're going to shut the government down? Well, what you mean is instead of supporting 350 million U.S. citizens, you're going to fight for 122,000 non-citizens.
Isn't it 900,000?
No, I don't know. I thought it was 122. I don't even believe any of the numbers anyway. I think it's way more than any of that.
Yeah.
I saw a meme that captures this pretty well, which was after the shithole controversy broke, the meme was, okay, I've just gotten the liberals to spend 3 days telling us how beautiful and wonderful shithole countries are, thus negating the argument why they need to stay here. Why don't they go back to these beautiful, wonderful countries then?
Right.
If they're not shitholes.
Yeah, that is another example of him forcing them to say what they really mean. And what the truth is of all of this is they literally just want Democrat voters. More people on the doles, they want more voters. That's their whole motivation.
And that's why.
And that's why California sucks.
Yeah, yeah.
The 86 amnesty, amnesty, I think that's really what tipped the scales here. Everybody says that. I'm not like a historian and I don't know. I've read articles that say that, and I guess I can't say that with total confidence, but after that late 80s amnesty that Reagan did, the state never went red after that.
Yeah, I haven't been here long. I mean, I'm about 10 years in here, so I haven't been here long enough either, but I mean, makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I want to ask Kira a question. We were talking about Trump and his personality and, kind of what he's done to the narrative, but it seems to me that one of the unheard aspects of this is his administration, what he's been doing that you never hear about, namely, Betsy DeVos or the EPA or whatever. And you said you're particularly interested in school choice. And I'm wondering, what have you seen since Trump got in relative to education, the whole, Betsy DeVos, school choice? Is anything changing other than, we talked about Common Core, but are you seeing anything happen for the good there? Or is it getting worse?
I think the main effects so far are just that states are feeling more free to pursue choice. But you have to understand that education still, for the large part, is a state issue. So you're still dealing with state to state politics, and you still have like union control in a lot of states. Colorado is a great example. So Colorado, Denver particularly, has this amazing school choice system. I went and toured it myself last year. It's incredible. It's really connected to the voters. So the voters get to decide, when and where they're going to put choice schools. They've managed to integrate. They have a huge Hispanic population. They've managed to integrate the schools and desegregate the schools in ways that have never happened before. Kids are getting incredible educations in the charter system and through the voucher program. And this last couple of months, the city council in Denver changed, and the unions kind of came back into power, and they trashed their school choice system. Wow. Even though it was working, and it was one of the best performing systems in the country.
So if you're for kids getting an education, if you're for integration, if you're for like all of these things that the Democrats are supposedly for, you'd be like, wow, this is really working.
Right. But if you're just about
power,
the power and the dollars, I mean, public education in this country, the teachers and the students are at the bottom of the ladder.
That's right.
Yeah. And that's right. All it is. So
and the funding keeps getting cut as the funding for the classroom continues to get cut. The classes get cut. I know more about like what's going on in Minnesota than anywhere else. And my mom was a school teacher in the Minneapolis public school system for 30 years. And she kind of pays attention, and she's part of the union and everything. And she tells me they've just cut this kind of class and that kind of class. It's like, but funding's going up. Every year they get more money.
It's because it's all getting sucked up at the top.
Yeah. It's the administrative, the bureaucrats.
Yeah, I actually wrote an article at Red State not too long ago about where all our school funding is going, because I don't know if you guys remember that tweet that Jenna Fisher, the actress from The Office, put out about being upset. She was upset during the tax reform fight that she thought that the deduction for classroom supplies was cut. It wasn't, but she thought it was, and she was upset about that. And so I wrote a response to that saying, I do agree that this is a topic we need to talk about, but let's talk about why teachers have to pay for their own.
I read your article on that. That was great. It was a perfect article.
And I included a chart, and I broke it all down. Like, this is the percentage rate that administrative positions are growing across the country, and this is the percentage rate compared to like what the student population, how that's growing. And in a lot of cases, the administrative costs are outpacing student enrollment by, 150, 200, 300%. In Louisiana, they increased I think 2012, they increased administrative costs by 372%, and they actually had negative student enrollment. Like they actually lost students.
Yeah.
So it's a huge scam.
It is
It's a blank
scam.
check.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
And who can say no? Like when you're at the ballot box and you see a measure, we get this every election cycle here in California, and you see
it's for
a
the
measure.
Children.
Yeah, why do you hate kids? Don't you want the kids to be educated? Like who can
This
say
is
no
the
to
argument
that?
for the dreamers too. It's like they're kids. They're not kids. Some of them might be kids. This should be done on an individualized basis. The fact, who are these dreamers? Oh, it's the children. I don't know that.
Well, and when Obama signed that DACA executive order, it had like a timeline built in there. Like they had like 10 years or something to get their paperwork in order, and it gave them a path to that paperwork. So what have you been doing all these years?
Poor me. No, they're going to deport me.
It's not a blank check. It's like, It means that all it means is that you have time to get this done the right way.
Well, and I heard, I was just kind of reading a little bit. I don't know a lot. I'm not an expert, but I was reading that when the amnesty was passed in the late 80s, that it was targeted specifically for farm workers, and it was supposed to cover like 300,000 people. And then what happened was everybody and their mothers sued. So there were just like the courts were tied up in lawsuits. Everybody was demanding amnesty. And there were even lawsuits for people demanding amnesty with that law that weren't even in the country when the amnesty was passed. So it's just an excuse to get something on the books, and then the leftist judges and lawyers use it to just let in more people. So no matter how it's written and how specific it's written. So I'm really not for this kind of thing. If you don't like how our immigration law is, then it should be changed. And I think there are some things that should be changed about it. It definitely seems to be a bureaucratic mess. And
it is. I don't know if you know this.
Favoritism and crap. And, people get married to an American citizen and it takes them forever to get in here and get a green card and work. And that's silly. Although there should be.
I don't know if you guys know this, but I'm an immigrant.
Oh, you are? Where are you from? Canada?
Yep.
Oh.
And my father is American, and I married an American, and I still had to jump through hoops.
Yeah.
And I didn't even realize, like, I came here on a student visa in 1992 to go to school here, and I knew that I wanted to stay. Like, it was never a question that I wanted to be an American. I always wanted to be here. And I just stayed past my visa because I just kind of assumed, well, my dad's American and he lives here. And I had a social security number. I mean, I paid taxes, I voted, I did all those things. So I thought, oh, there's no problem. It's fine. And then I left the country. This is pre 9/11. And I left the country. And when I came back, they were like, oh, no, you actually don't have the right to come back in here. You don't have the proper paperwork. And I was like, what? So at that time, they were more lenient and they let me in, but they gave me all of the process to go through. Like, this is what you need to do. You need to get this started. And I tried for 7 or 8 years by myself, and just the process was so expensive and so convoluted. I could never do it. So I never left. I just didn't leave the country for that time. And then when I got married, my husband and I were like, well, we need to sort this out. So we hired a lawyer. And finally, the lawyer was able to get everything straightened out. That took me 10 years and almost $10,000 to do.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Jeez.
Yeah, it is ridiculous. So I'm for immigration reform, but I'm for it at the bureaucratic level.
And yes. Let's not do these blanket amnesties where you're not actually talking about people with. I don't know. We don't know anything about it. Whenever I see all the articles are just trying to pull at my heartstrings, I become really skeptical. Because if there were any facts that would make me support this, they would be saying them.
I think we need to reform the whole immigration system too. It's funny because I actually lived in Canada for a couple of years, and I had to go through the process there of living in Canada.
It's more convoluted.
It's I mean, because because you need a work permit.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to really, if you're supported by an employer who has an expensive law firm, they can get it done for you, but it's not easy. It's not easy coming from anywhere. I think there should be with a merit-based system, someone like Kira or someone like myself, we're going to, Canada or the U.S. and you're educated, you're productive, you speak the language, and so on and so forth. You should be high at the list. I mean, it should be relatively simple for you to get in. And the fact that we have diversity lotteries where they just like randomly let people in from anywhere in the world, or the whole system just needs to be.
It's a hodgepodge of crap, of bureaucratic crap. So yeah, I don't know what can be done, but hey, let's move on to the Women's March. I was talking to Kira and Doug before the show started, and I was saying I don't really have a take on this. But Kira, you were in San Francisco for last year's Women's March. That must have been really fun.
It was interesting. Well, I had been there for the March for Life. I was covering that with Red State, and the Women's March was the next day. So
I'm going to stick around. You should have had a mic and a camera and gone down to the thing.
I did make some recordings. I did do some interviews. You can probably Google that and find it at Red State from last year. But it was interesting because
did you wear a pussy hat? Did you get one?
No, I did not. No. Of course, now I know you guys have heard that the pussy hat thing has been trashed because it's not sensitive to trans women.
Oh.
Or women of
also,
color
what if
who
your
might
pussy's
have genitals
brown?
that are brown.
Come
I
on.
swear, I'm not making. I swear.
Well, I mean, they can just make a brown version, can't they?
I don't know.
I saw a woman
gender women who don't have vaginas, as if there's a thing.
I saw a white woman downtown Napa with a pussy hat on that was kind of a cream colored, and not kidding. And I remember looking at that and going, "Is that a pussy hat?" Like, because it was not the right color, but apparently it was her color, so that's great.
It's the average pussy color. You have to.
She was advertising her pussy color. She was saying, "I got a cream colored pussy. Come and get it."
This is another example of how tone deaf the left is. And how they've taken his rhetoric and his branding and tried to make it their own, and all it does is like make them look vulgar, ironically, rather than him.
When you're having women at a women's march trying on hijabs, like for me, that's where it ends. Like I would just never ever be on the side of any activist march that supports the oppression of women. I just can't even believe it. I saw a video of girls like, yeah, I'm trying on a hijab, and what? I'm
and they don't see it as
appalled.
That. And I'm just, if I can imagine that if the tables were turned and that were, say, Christian activists who are saying, you know what, women should keep their heads covered because it's more modest.
Yeah.
You should wear a habit, the nun habit.
Because men can't control themselves if you don't.
Right. But I'll tell you what, I did some interviews at the Women's March last year. And one of the questions that I asked, now if you recall, it was right around the inauguration time. So we had no idea what a Trump administration was going to look like. Everything was just kind of chaotic. And so the one question I asked every person I interviewed was, what's your greatest fear about a Trump administration? Well, it's two questions actually. And what do you think is going to happen? And the answer overwhelmingly, I would say almost 99% was, I don't know, for both questions. So people didn't have like a real
I wasn't expecting that.
But I'm protesting it.
Oh my God.
Like no one could say. There was one person who said, gave some vague answer about, it's going to be harder to be a woman. And so I said, well, how so? Like, tell me what is going to happen. Do you think he's going to propose a constitutional amendment? Do you think he's going to force Congress to, negate part of the Constitution? Is he going to change some laws? Like, I wanted specifics. Like, tell me the procedure.
Exactly. What is he going to do?
No, well, just more like in the tone he set.
He might say pussy. Meanwhile, I have a pussy hat on my head.
So, there was even still, it's like, there's nobody that can point to anything that's like, is.
Clinton stuck a cigar up a woman's twat in the Oval Office. And he came on her dress And we're worried about, and these women with their pussy hats on and their vagina costumes screeching about Trump having the wrong tone. I mean, I don't like guys like that either that would say, oh yeah, I grabbed her pussy. Like, that's gross. I wouldn't date a guy like that or whatever. But, do I want that in my president? No, but I'm not, come on.
Note taking Sonny off dating list.
Yeah, I know, Doug, you're one of those guys. I know that.
Go ahead.
I have them on my podcast, but I don't date them.
I'll tell you what. My husband works in corporate America. He is he's a guy and a black man, and he's also part of the middle class. So all of these qualifiers ahead of time. And we were a little bit at odds during the election. He was actually very pro-Trump from the beginning. And I was like not knowing how to deal with it because typically he's apolitical. So typically at election time, he would be like, who are we voting for? Okay, great. That's who I'll check at the ballot box. But this time he actually had real opinions. And when that came out, he said, well, I wouldn't say this in mixed company. And here I am airing it out now. But I wouldn't say this in mixed company, but that's how guys talk at the corporate level.
A lot of guys talk that way.
At the corporate level, because there's so much power and money running through there that they're all trying to like outdo each other and impress each other. So he's like, that's not a lot different from a lot of the things I hear when I'm traveling and when I'm going to like conferences and stuff. So he wasn't shocked or surprised at all. He doesn't necessarily find it attractive, but for him, the reason why it didn't really bother him and doesn't really bother a lot of people. It didn't
really bother me either.
And a lot of people, Red State is hashtag never Trump over there.
Yeah.
There's only a couple of us that are not never Trump. And they constantly, the Red State writers are running down Christians, because most of us are Christians there, are running down Christians who support Trump and calling it hypocritical. And I mean, my husband and I, we're like born again Christians. We're like the kind of Christians people make fun of, And and my husband was like,
it's great.
This is like, my husband was like, I'm not voting for a pastor. Like, I understand that this guy is not a good guy. I'm not voting for the good guy.
Yeah.
There's no good guy in this race. I'm voting for the guy who's going to make it easier for me
you should say,
for my family.
Don't you agree with separation in church and state?
Right. Right.
Yeah. Right. It didn't bother me either. And again, it's one of these, like, it's a hot mic. It's behind closed doors, couple of guys. Same with the shithole comment, frankly. I mean, if he tweeted it, maybe I'd feel a little worse about it. But even that, I'm kind of like, well, they are shithole countries. And
when I first heard it, I was like, first of all, I'm not going to act like this is a real story when it's just based on something that Chuck Schumer said. Second of all, even if he did say it, I don't see the problem. I don't want more immigrants from shithole. There's a lot of shithole countries out there. This is the problem. There's so many shithole countries, and we're the best, and they all want to come here. And when they come here in droves, we don't have time to assimilate them. And then we get turned into a shithole country. I don't want that. So frankly, again, that's, as we've been discussing this whole podcast, that's just another case of Trump saying what we all are thinking.
That's right.
That's the most succinct description of the whole argument I've ever heard, Kira. That was great. The last 3 sentences you just said. Right? It's exactly right.
It's another example of him controlling, like with the word, even if he did say it. What's funny is the Democrats came out and said, oh, he said shithole. And since then, that word is now attached to Haiti and Africa, and it's like now a free association that everybody's making when you think about these countries and the people immigrating from there. And now everybody's going to think shithole.
Did you see that tweet that Conan O'Brien put out yesterday or the day before of him in Haiti? But he's at like a resort and he's in the beautiful water and he's drinking from a coconut. And he's like, Haiti is not a shithole and the people here are not shitholes. And I'm like, you asshole, you're at a private resort that is surrounded by barbed wire and armed guards.
Guaranteed he has private security with him too.
Then why are they leaving?
I mean,
why leave then?
I've been to. I don't know if you guys have ever been
Nope.
to that island.
No,
Have
but
you ever
I've been
Dominican?
to Minneapolis. So
Yeah. Okay. But that island is one side is the Dominican and one
right,
side
right.
is Haiti. And I've been to the Dominican on vacation because it's a very lovely place with a thriving tourist industry
Mhm.
and it's pretty developed. But when you fly in, it's almost like seeing the difference between North Korea and South Korea from space, where North Korea is like totally dark. You fly in and Haiti is just brown and like desert and garbage. And then there's a borderline, like a literal border. They have a wall.
They have a
their own
wall?
wall there. Yeah, of course they got a wall. They're going to keep the people from the
Are
shithole
they
country
racist?
out.
Are they racist?
Probably.
Are the black and brown Dominicans racist against the black and brown Haitians?
Well, we can talk a little bit about colorism if you want, which is a very real thing. So yes, there is such a thing as racism among black and brown people, but that's a whole other show.
Yeah.
So yes, that's also a possibility, but you just see the difference between those places where Dominican has a more democratic system and they also, have developed their tourism industry, and Haiti is still socialist, basically borderline communist, and their people are suffering greatly. And it's a small island, and there's just that dividing line that divides that. It's incredible to see when you fly over. It is stunning. Haiti has its own problems.
You know what the Haitians need? They need Bill and Hillary Clinton.
That's a good idea.
They were there.
Oh, were they? Oh, is that right?
Oh, well, I'm sure they were just
suck
there to
the aid money out of there.
Oh my God, they robbed them blind.
They robbed them blind.
Cash. They were just dropping off their piles of cash, weren't they?
Yes.
Oh,
they care. They care.
Yeah.
I remember my liberal friend telling me during the elections, during the general elections, and he's like a big Hillary supporter, that the Clintons donate every bit of their speaking fee to charity. And I was like,
wow.
Yeah, their charity.
How can you be so dumb?
I don't know. I don't want to call my friend dumb.
No, I know. Listen, we have friends. We have friends who I would say on more they're more on the libertarian side, and they voted for Hillary. There's just this idea that Trump is so bad that they had to vote for a corrupt. They had to vote for the worst possible thing ever.
If we had Hillary,
we would be in so much deep doo-doo. It would be awful.
It would.
There would be amnesty, no chance of any kind of Obamacare fix.
For sure, be bombed by North Korea by now.
Yeah, she's a hawk. She's a crazy hawk. Look what she did to Libya.
Yeah.
So.
Look what she did to America.
Right.
I got to ask you guys about this, going back to that women's march thing. So they had Tammy Bruce and Kathy Aru, I think, was on last night to discuss this. And they were basically saying, what's the beef? What are these women, what are they marching for? The unemployment rate for females is like an 18-year low. And Kathy Aru said, we need more women's voices. That's all she could come up with. We need more voices. Have you guys heard this one?
Yeah, well, that's just the...
What does that mean?
It's the usual identity politics thing that, that this sex or this race or this sexual orientation isn't getting enough space to voice their opinions. But I hear women everywhere.
All the time. And I'm sick of it. I want fewer women. I swear. I don't want to work at an all-women's job place. And I love women, and clearly I'm a woman, and I'm raising a young woman, but too many women in one place.
Too many women.
Is super annoying.
Aren't there like 7 Beverly Hills Housewives shows now?
Yeah, we don't need more female voices.
We need more
It's
women's
interesting
voices.
that, that's a good point, Doug. There are the men of Beverly Hills where you get the drama and the fighting and you don't see that on TV.
That's because there's not enough. There actually was a show there was a House Husbands show.
And it was boring.
Briefly. Yeah, it was that same like whole Andy Cohen thing of shows, and they did do a spinoff of the husbands, but the husbands were too boring because they don't have
Well, it would be like 3 hours of guys watching football
It was mostly them
drinking
just
beer.
Yeah, it was mostly them just complaining about how annoying their wife.
Oh, that's funny. Oh, that's sad.
Yeah.
Shut up in there.
Yeah, so it didn't last very long.
That's so funny.
But I always say this when in response to that, though, Doug. I always say, first of all, what I just said, that I don't really think women should be running everything. To be honest, women should be running some things. But I think when you get too many women, the scales get unbalanced because women have our own strengths, which they're like nurturing and, things like that. And that can also be detrimental to the balance of the scales. However, just like I don't think we should have more Republicans than Democrats in the country. I think it should always be this battle. I think that's good for us. But like when it comes to people, activists are always saying like, we need more Black voices. And as a Black woman, it's like, I understand what that means because I do live in an area where there aren't a lot of Black people. And I know, like, I miss that sometimes. And I know that it can be hard to have people understand what your specific concerns are when you don't have a majority of those people around you. But we abort our babies at a rate that is 35% higher than white people in this country and 25% higher than Hispanic people in this country. So we're literally killing off our political capital. And we're never allowed to talk about that because Planned Parenthood was founded by somebody whose goal was to reduce the Black population, and it's working. So I think those things go hand in hand. Again, and I'm not asking anyone to comment on the issue of abortion or where you stand morally on it, but just logically, if you just look objectively at that, the original goal of Planned Parenthood is actually working in communities. And yet we still get behind the people who support the culling of our race, And that is the message that I wish more Black people would hear. Yeah, we need more Black voices, but we need more Black people to be here so we can have that influence on society. And we don't have that right now. And
I would just like to live in a world where it just doesn't matter, like where people don't.
That's impossible. I hate it when you say that, Sonny. I'm going to be like honest with you.
I mean,
I say that. I don't
Here's something about me. I grew up in a Black neighborhood. And I mean, it was probably half and half. So it was a very, very mixed neighborhood, maybe even majority Black. And as kids, we didn't think about it or talk about it at all. It wasn't a thing. And of course, this is in like the 80s, early 80s. It's after a lot of segregation and stuff. We all went to the same school. I mean, I would say if we were divided up socially, it was more class. And, who were the kids who were doing their homework and who were the kids who weren't. And usually that went along class lines. So, I mean, I feel like I lived that. And then I got to college and all of the intellectuals start bringing in all of this, diversity is a strength. Racism is everywhere. It's institutional. I mean, and then everybody starts getting angry and fighting. And I understand that there are some cultural differences too, because I mean, I grew up there. So I know that like, if you're a Black person, you'd want to be around some Black people because there's some cultural stuff that you feel good around and you enjoy. And there are some Black culture things that I like that I kind of feel like white people could benefit from and vice versa. I don't know. Maybe I'm an idealist. I just feel like, why can't we merge as Americans and just stop all this? You gotta. Well,
I think
you gotta have more white people. You gotta have more Black people. You got,
Well, I think you make a really good point that a lot of stuff is cultural. I tend to believe that 98% of what we call racism these days is actually just cultural misunderstanding.
Yeah.
So I agree with that.
Or cultural preference. I mean, it's okay to have a cultural preference, and that's perfectly fine and human.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with all that. I would just add to what you have to say that for you feel like you grew up in that atmosphere, but I bet if you ask most of those Black people, they probably had a little different experience. Like they were probably looking at it from a different angle. They were having to learn to live in a majority white society, even though their school might have been more integrated. I think it's a different experience when you're in the minority, because because what's normal to you isn't normal to them. So for you, there was no change in how you lived, but for those kids, I bet there was a big difference between how they lived at school, how they lived at home, and how they viewed themselves.
I mean, maybe it'd be interesting to ask them.
It would be.
I went to their homes, as much as I went to anybody else, and my white friends' homes. Like, we all hung out together. So
yeah, I bet you'd be interested to hear what the conversations were after you left. I don't think it's what I think that a lot of people I meet, a lot of, if you'll just forgive me for a moment.
Say it. Yeah, say it.
A lot of white people I meet feel like, look, I don't see race. And I have a lot of.
And it's easy for them to say that, is what you're saying. It's easy for you to say that because you're not in a minority.
That's right. And because you don't look at people like that, and you didn't, and you went to their houses, and you never once considered that there was a difference between, as far as like your equality.
I saw a difference. I'm not saying that there wasn't a cultural difference, but I don't think.
But their value, not a difference on their value. But it's different when you're in the minority, you're living in an entire society where the norms are set to, like, the standards of beauty are white. The standards of how you speak are white. All of these standards are white.
They're Western, aren't they? Rather than white.
Well, Black people look at them as white. So
I know they do.
Again, all right, good. So there's a difference. There's a difference between how you look at it.
But I don't know if that's right. I mean, if you're looking at, standards of beauty, that would bother me because that's a non-essential. But like standards of speech, there's a reason that we speak this way. It's not a white thing. If you study the history of language, it evolved like this. There's literature. There are high level intellectual things you're missing out on if you can't read, high level literature. And
I understand that, but that's how it should be, but it's not what it is. So that's not how Black people look at that.
Well, these are interesting questions. This could be a whole show.
I do think
we should do this show.
Yeah, we should definitely do this whole show. This is a very interesting.
Yeah, we can say all day long, like, when are we going to get to the point where we're just Americans, we're not this, that, or the other, but there is literally no society on earth that has that. Yeah, and that's a human problem, not an American problem.
Kira, I often see people more like of our, libertarian type persuasion, like myself, that, we talk about or idealize the sort of colorblind society and hold that out as an ideal, and, look at people who I would regard mostly on the left, that are engaging more in identity politics, and, they seem to be engaging in what I'd call racism. And yet I almost see it as a false alternative. I don't think we should be colorblind. There is such a thing as race. There's such a thing as culture. There's such a thing as nationality. These things are real, and people identify with them, and there's nothing wrong with admitting that. And so I think the whole, we should never think about race, I think that's totally unrealistic. I completely agree with you on that. But what I find is interesting is then what people do with it. It seems like a lot of the mainstream academics have said, okay, yeah, we recognize there's culture, there's race, these things that exist. There's class, there's these categories of people. People tend to self-select themselves into these groups. But then what do you do with that information? I tend to think, hey, anyone can be anything they want. You can be a Black person in Black culture and still do anything you want, be anything you want, achieve anything you want. And that's true of any other group. Whereas it seems like a lot of people are taking those categories and then saying, well, okay, yeah, there are these categories, and therefore white people are bad, or white people are oppressive, or white people need to shut up, or, they take, in other words, I think it's a false alternative to say there's no group, there's no culture, there's no race. We should admit that, but then at the same time, shouldn't we also treat people as individuals and say within that context, you can still think
and especially politically. It should be equality on the individual level, equality before the law. It shouldn't be a group identity. And if we all lived in the political world that the three of us want to be in, it would be there wouldn't be pressure groups, because what are they pressuring for? The government wouldn't have the power to dole out favors to one group or another. And you're just kind of on your own and making your life. And maybe this idea that, and I don't know, I'm going to think about this. But the idea of the colorblind society is just more of this leftist meddling rather than like letting people be who they are and want to be somewhat with their own culture. And like, why do we have to create a world, or why are we working toward a world where we're kind of forcing people to not admit this or say, yeah, hey, I want to live in a black neighborhood where I can have a lot of cultural and I don't feel like an outsider.
Right.
But
yeah, I just think human nature is what prevents that. I don't think that it's political. I don't think that it is an America thing. As a matter of fact, we could make the argument that America is the least racist country on the face of the planet. I grew up in Canada as a black kid in a majority white area, and trust me, I have plenty of horrible stories. So you're saying I grew up in a blacker neighborhood than you? Yeah, well, until I moved to Washington, D.C. at the age of 12, and then it was a whole different. It's a whole new world. Yeah, it was like a whole thing.
It's a dump there.
I went to school there.
Oh my God.
I'll just tell you some stories.
Well, congratulations for coming out of that like a healthy, intelligent individual. That's a whole thing. But I do think that some of this stuff is human nature, and probably, because I do know some of your views, Sunny, probably we'd have some disagreement on this, because I think this is where we probably get into religious stuff. So as a Christian, I would say, well, this is human nature. And it's not something that is surmountable on our own. This is kind of something we're born into. And we're not born good people. And you know this because you have to teach your baby how to be good. You don't have to teach your baby how to be bad. You could just leave your baby alone and not let your baby do anything. Well, yeah, I mean, I guess like the natural state would be savage. Okay. I mean, you just look around the world, and that's why you have. Well, this is a whole show. We've actually gone over time, so I actually have to wrap this. I have to wrap this up, Kira. But you are such a great guest. It was so fun talking to you, and I really want to do a whole show on race. I think that would be fascinating. It'd be fun if I could find one of my high school friends to come on and talk about like what their experience was. And
that actually would be interesting.
Yeah. Okay.
Are you friends with any of your high school?
Yeah. I mean, there's a guy here who was our valedictorian, black guy, one of my closest friends, and he lives in Stanford, just down the road from me, and has a great life. And we both grew up in kind of the inner city, and so it was a struggle. I mean, I think we had a lot of similar struggles, but both his parents were PhDs, and he was just a higher class. And I think most of my friends, I would say, were middle class, because we weren't. I was poor, but I came from a background that was more middle class. So I studied. We were all the studying kids and the kids who were athletic and, the kind of straight arrows. And he was one of them, but it would be interesting to get his perspective. I remember him being teased for being white. His name, I won't say his name. Yeah. His last name was a color, and they would say his first name and say white. They would call him so-and-so white. But anyway, it's an interesting topic. I wonder if he'd come on, because I think he'd probably have some calm. And he was just a super nice guy. Be interesting to know what he thought about growing up in my neighborhood with me. Anyway, let's do it.
Interesting. Let's do it. I'm down.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for joining us today. And for all of you out there, if you're enjoying the show, go over to patreon.com/House of Sunny and give us a few bucks. Help us. We have actually broken even on like the direct costs. So everything after this is now kind of going to videos and some other things. And also maybe improving the show, and maybe we can have some in-person guests and maybe get a studio eventually. I don't know who our guest is next week. I'm still working on it, so I don't have anything to say for that. Anyway, tune in next week, and we'll see you then.
Thanks for listening to the House of Sunny podcast. Go check out Sunny on YouTube at her channel, House of Sunny. Everything Sunny does is fan-funded, and because she's likely to get kicked off and demonetized on every platform at some point, please support her over at patreon.com/House of Sunny. Become one of Sunny's elite squad and have access to behind-the-scenes footage, t-shirts, special events, and more.